I still remember the smell of her room. Lavender and old paper. Even now, when I walk past her door, it feels like she might answer if I knock. But she won't. Because my daughter, Lily, left this world before I could tell her that I understood her, that I forgave her, and that I was proud of her, no matter what. The morning after her funeral, I found the letter. It was tucked between the pages of her favorite book, To Kill a Mockingbird. My hands shook when I saw my name written in her handwriting. Mom, I couldn't open it. Not that day. Not the week after. I kept it inside the drawer of my nightstand, thinking maybe one day I'd be strong enough to face her words. But days turned into months, and I wasn't. People told me to move on. That grief fades with time, but they don't know what it's like to lose the one person who carried your smile, your habits, your laughter. Some nights I'd sit alone in her room, just talking, pretending she was still there, listening. I'd say things like, "You remember that summer we painted this wall blue? You said it looked like the ocean." Then I'd smile for a second before the tears came back. I thought keeping the letter closed was protecting me. But really, I was running away from the truth she left behind, and the day I finally decided to open it, that was the day everything changed. Lily was my only child. She came into this world on a rainy October morning, crying so loud that the nurse laughed and said, "She's going to have a strong voice, ma'am," and she did. From the moment she could talk, Lily never stopped asking questions, the kind of questions that made you stop what you were doing and actually think. "Mom, why do people stop loving each other? Why do stars die? How do you know if someone really means I love you?" She was only 7 when she asked that last one. I remember laughing, brushing her hair behind her ears and saying, "You'll just know, sweetheart. Your heart will tell you. If only I had known how wrong I'd be about that." We lived in a small American town, Maple Grove, the kind of place where everyone waves when they drive past you, where Friday nights mean church dinners and homemade pies. I worked at the local library. Lily grew up surrounded by books, stories, and quiet. Maybe that's why she always loved words. Her father, Tom, was gentle but distant. He worked construction, gone most days, tired most nights. I used to tell myself it was okay, that Lily and I were enough. But deep down, I could see how much she missed him. Every time the front door opened, her eyes would light up, only to dim again when he walked straight to the shower, too tired to talk. Still, Lily tried. She'd draw pictures for him, little stick figures of our family. She'd tape them to the fridge with his favorite magnets. Sometimes he'd smile and say, "That's nice, kiddo." Sometimes he wouldn't even look. As she grew older, Lily stopped trying to get his attention. Instead, she focused on school. She was smart, really smart, the kind of girl who could read a novel in a weekend and quote it by Monday. But she was also sensitive. If someone said something unkind, she'd pretend it didn't matter, then cry alone in her room later. I tried to be there for her, but I was busy working 2 shifts after Tom left us. He didn't say much when he packed his things, just left a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry. I need to find myself." I hated that sentence for years. Find himself? What about us? Lily was 16 when he left. That was the night she stopped calling me Mom and started saying Mother. It wasn't disrespect, it was distance. The kind that comes quietly and stays too long. She finished high school with honors, got into a state university 2 hours away. The day she left for college, she hugged me quickly like she didn't want to make it harder. "Take care, Mother," she said. I smiled through tears. "Call me when you get there." She nodded, but weeks passed before she did. At first, her calls were full of excitement. New classes, new friends, new freedom. But slowly, something changed. Her voice grew quieter. Her messages shorter. When I'd ask, "Is everything okay?" she'd say, "Yeah, just busy." Mothers can tell when something's wrong. Even through the phone, even across miles, I could feel her fading. The last time she came home was during Christmas. She looked tired, pale. Her eyes had that faraway look, like she was in 2 places at once. I cooked her favorite meal, chicken pot pie, just like I did every year. She barely touched it. "Lily, honey, are you eating well?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Yeah, just not hungry." After dinner, we sat by the fireplace. She pulled her knees close and said quietly, "Do you ever feel like you're disappointing everyone, Mom?" The way she said Mom, soft, almost afraid, broke me. I reached over and held her hand. Never. You could never disappoint me. She nodded but didn't meet my eyes. Before she left, she hugged me tight, tighter than usual. When I said, "See you soon," she just whispered, "I love you, Mom." I didn't realize it would be the last time I'd hear her voice. A month later, I got the call. It was early morning, the kind of silence where you can still hear the clock tick in the hallway. The phone rang once, twice. Then a man's voice said, "Ma'am, this is Officer Reynolds from Willow County Police. Are you the mother of Lily Evans?" My knees went weak before he even said the rest. He told me she was gone. A car accident. Late at night. No alcohol, no other car involved. Just rain, speed, and darkness. I don't remember hanging up. I remember the sound of the phone hitting the floor, and me screaming her name into the empty house. When I got to the hospital, they handed me her belongings in a small plastic bag. Her phone, wallet, a silver bracelet I'd given her on her 18th birthday. There was also the book, To Kill a Mockingbird. The nurse said, "We found it on the passenger seat." Maybe it meant something to her. At the time, I didn't notice the folded piece of paper tucked between the pages. The days after the funeral felt like walking through water, every step heavy, every breath slow. People came, dropped off casseroles, and whispered things they thought were comforting. "She's in a better place. Time heals everything. You're strong. You'll get through this." But strength has nothing to do with it. When you lose your child, the world doesn't stop, and that's the cruelest part. The mail still comes. The sun still rises. Your neighbor still waves good morning, not knowing that your mornings are no longer something to greet. I stopped going to work at the library. The smell of books reminded me of her, the paper, the ink, the quiet. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. At home, I'd wander from room to room like a ghost, touching the things she'd left behind. Her scarf on the chair, her half-burned candle, the coffee mug she always used. Her phone sat on my dresser. I kept it plugged in, even though I couldn't bring myself to open it. I thought maybe, foolishly, she might text me. A week later, I found myself sitting on her bed, holding the book again. To Kill a Mockingbird. It was her favorite since she was 12. She said, "Mom, I like Atticus Finch because he always tells the truth, even when it hurts." And I remember thinking how much like her that sounded. That night, I held the book against my chest and whispered, "Why didn't you tell me you were hurting, Lily?" There was no answer, just the faint hum of the night outside. When I finally opened the book, I saw it. That folded piece of paper, the one I hadn't noticed at the hospital. My heart started pounding. My hands shook. I thought, not yet. I can't, so I closed it. And I hid the letter inside my nightstand. Days turned into weeks. People stopped calling. Friends avoided eye contact in the grocery store. That's what happens when grief stays too long. It makes others uncomfortable, but grief doesn't check the clock. It sits with you, eats with you, sleeps beside you. 3 months later, I tried to go back to work. The library felt different, quieter, lonelier. My coworker, Diane, gave me that sad smile people give when they don't know what to say. She said, "Take it one day at a time, honey." I nodded, though inside I wanted to ask her, what if one day never feels enough? Every day after work, I'd walk home past the high school. Sometimes I'd stop and watch the students laughing, arguing, living, all the things Lily should have been doing. One afternoon, I saw a girl sitting under a tree, crying quietly. She looked just like Lily. Same dark hair, same fragile way of holding herself. Something in me broke. I walked up to her and said softly, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" She wiped her tears and said, "Just a bad day." I nodded. "I know those." Then she smiled weakly and said, "Thanks, ma'am. You remind me of my mom." And she walked away. I stood there for a long time, the wind brushing my hair, thinking how a stranger could see what my own daughter might have missed, that I loved her more than she ever knew. That night, I opened Lily's phone. Her wallpaper was still the same, a picture of us at the lake when she was 10, both of us wearing sun hats and laughing. I scrolled through her messages, friends, classmates, photos of sunsets, coffee cups, and poetry quotes. Then I saw one message that stood out. It was unsent and saved in her drafts. It said, "Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Please don't blame yourself. Some things just feel too heavy to carry." My hands went numb. She'd written it but never sent it. I stared at it for a long time, whispering her name over and over until the room blurred. I realized then that she had been crying for help in silence, hiding behind smiles I wanted to believe. Spring came, but I barely noticed. Neighbors planted flowers. The kids next door rode their bikes again. The world was healing, but I wasn't. One morning, Diane stopped by with coffee. She looked around my house, still untouched, Lily's things everywhere, and said gently, "You can't keep living in this tomb, honey." I wanted to argue, but she was right. So I started small. I folded Lily's clothes, one piece at a time. Each shirt, each sweater was like saying goodbye again. When I found her old journal, I sat down and read the first few pages. She'd written about her first day of college. Nervous, excited, scared. Then further down she wrote, "Sometimes I feel invisible. I don't think Mom knows how much I miss her." I stopped reading. I couldn't breathe. Invisible. That word stayed with me for days. A few weeks later, I decided to visit the spot where the accident happened. It was a narrow country road, lined with tall trees. Someone had already placed flowers there. I don't know who. Maybe her friends. I sat by the roadside, listening to the wind moving through the leaves. That's when I heard it, faint laughter. A group of young people walking by, probably from the college nearby. One of them looked like Lily for a split second. Same posture, same smile. Tears filled my eyes. I said out loud, "Are you happy now, sweetheart? Are you at peace?" For the first time in months, I felt something gentle, like forgiveness touching my shoulder. But that peace didn't last. When I returned home, I couldn't sleep. The book kept calling to me. The letter inside it waited, patient and silent. It felt like Lily's presence had grown heavier, as if she was waiting for me to read it, to finally face what she left behind. But I wasn't ready yet. I told myself maybe next week, maybe next month. But grief has its own clock, and it doesn't wait for courage. I woke up to the sound of birds outside, chirping softly against the foggy morning. The house was quiet, almost peaceful, but there was a heaviness in the air that I couldn't name. I brewed my coffee, staring at the empty chair across from me, the one Emma used to sit in, feet tucked under her, talking about her day. The phone rang. I picked it up without much thought. It was Emma's husband, Michael. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling. "Emma's in the hospital." The world stopped moving. My heart raced. What? What happened? He hesitated. "She collapsed at work. The doctors? They're not sure yet." I didn't wait for details. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and drove as fast as my trembling hands allowed. Hospitals have a smell, one you never forget. Cold air, sanitizer, and something unexplainably lonely. When I reached the front desk, I barely managed to say my daughter's name. The nurse nodded, her expression soft. "Room 204, but please prepare yourself." The words barely registered. I walked down the long corridor, each step echoing against the tile floor. When I entered the room, Emma was lying still, pale but peaceful. Machines beeped softly beside her. Michael stood in the corner, eyes red, clutching a small brown envelope. "She wanted me to give you this," he whispered. I didn't let him finish. My knees weakened. The room spun. I held the envelope like it was something sacred. Her handwriting and my little girl's handwriting stared back at me. I wanted to open it. Every part of me screamed to, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I sat beside her bed, stroking her hand, whispering memories. "Remember your first school play?" I said softly. "You forgot your lines and I stood up in the audience mouthing them to you." No answer. Just the rhythm of the heart monitor. Hours later, Michael placed his hand on my shoulder. "She wouldn't want you to sit here forever," he said gently. I nodded, though I didn't move. The church smelled of lilies and rain. Everyone wore black, faces blurred by tears. I didn't cry at first. I couldn't. I just stared at the coffin, the photo of her smiling face beside it. People came and went, offering condolences. Words like "she's in a better place" floated around me, empty and hollow. When the ceremony ended, I stayed back, my fingers brushing over the coffin lid. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered, for everything I didn't say. For everything I said wrong. The days after were a blur. The house felt even emptier. Her room remained untouched, the bed still made, a half-read book on the nightstand, and that letter. It sat on my kitchen table. Every morning I stared at it. Every night I promised myself I'd open it tomorrow, but I couldn't, because opening it would make it real, that she was truly gone. It was raining again. I was folding laundry when I found one of her scarves. Soft, floral, still faintly carrying her perfume. That was the moment I broke. I went to the table, sat down, and finally opened the envelope. Her handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. Mom, if you're reading this, I know I didn't have much time left. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. I've been sick for a while. My breath caught. I wanted to spend my last days living, not dying. I wanted to laugh with you, cook with you, even argue with you. But I saw how much pain my illness caused you before, when Dad was sick. I couldn't do that to you again. Tears blurred the ink. My heart cracked in two. The letter continued. Mom, please don't feel guilty. You gave me everything. You taught me how to be kind, how to forgive, how to love without expecting anything back. I didn't say goodbye because I never wanted to say it. You'll always be my home. At the bottom, she had drawn a little heart, just like she used to when she was a child. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on my chest. The rain outside turned gentle, almost like she was saying goodbye through the sound of it. The days after reading Emma's letter passed like waves, gentle one moment, crashing the next. I would be washing dishes or folding clothes, and suddenly I'd hear her laughter echo somewhere in the house. Sometimes I even answered her out loud, before realizing it was only my memory talking back. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in quiet moments, in the way sunlight hits an empty chair, or how a song you used to hum together plays by accident. For the first few weeks, I lived inside that silence. I didn't answer calls. I didn't open the curtains. I only sat with her letter, tracing her words with my fingers until they felt carved into me. But something changed one morning. I walked outside and noticed the garden. Weeds everywhere, the flowers we planted together nearly gone. Emma loved that garden. She used to kneel in the dirt with her little gloves, saying, "Flowers need to be cared for, Mom, just like people." So I got down on my knees and started pulling weeds. It was slow at first, my hands shaking. But as I worked, something inside me loosened. The earth felt soft, alive. And for the first time in months, I felt her there. Not as a memory, but as presence. As peace. A few days later, Michael visited. He looked tired, but calmer than before. He brought a small box with him. "She wanted you to have this," he said softly, setting it on the table. It was an old music box, the one Emma had as a child. When I wound it, the tune began to play. "You Are My Sunshine." I smiled through the tears. "She played this every night when she was scared," I whispered. Michael nodded. "She said it always made her feel safe." We sat together for a while, the melody filling the space between us. Neither of us said much, but it felt enough. Sometimes silence speaks the loudest. After that day, I started doing little things again. I cooked her favorite soup. I went to church on Sundays, even when it hurt to walk past the pew where we once sat together. And then, one morning, I decided to volunteer at the local community center. They needed someone to help the children with reading. I didn't know if I could handle being around kids, but something inside whispered, "Try." The first day, a little girl named Anna sat beside me. She looked nervous, holding a worn-out storybook. "You can start whenever you're ready," I told her gently. She began to read, stumbling over a few words, then glancing up at me for help. Her eyes, big and uncertain, reminded me of Emma at that age. I smiled, correcting her softly. By the time she finished the page, she was grinning. "Did I do good?" I nodded. "You did perfect." That night, I went home and cried, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from something new, something lighter. As months went by, I found myself talking to Emma more, not in grief, but in gratitude. I told her about my garden, about Anna, about how I'd finally started baking again. I even laughed one day when I burned the bread, saying, "You'd tease me for that, wouldn't you?" And maybe it was my imagination, but I swear I could almost hear her laugh back. On her birthday, I visited her grave. I brought fresh tulips, her favorite, and the music box. The cemetery was quiet, sunlight breaking gently through the trees. I sat down and whispered, "You were right, sweetheart. Flowers do need care, and so do hearts." I wound the music box again, letting the tune play into the open air. Birds chirped softly in the distance. I didn't cry this time. I just smiled, because for the first time I felt peace. Real peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because love had outlasted it. That night, I placed her letter inside a small frame on my nightstand. I didn't read it again. I didn't need to. The words were already inside me. I lay in bed, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. And I thought about how she lived, not with fear, but with quiet strength. And I realized something. Grief never really leaves you. It just changes shape. It becomes a part of your story, something you carry, like a folded letter in your heart. And sometimes when you least expect it, that letter opens itself again, not to hurt you, but to remind you of love. It's been 2 years since Emma passed. Sometimes it still feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. The seasons have changed. The garden is full again. Tulips, daisies, roses. Every flower carries a memory of her. When I water them, I talk to her. Not because I expect an answer, but because it feels like she's still listening. Life didn't return to what it was, but it found a new rhythm. I still wake up early, make coffee, and sit by the window. The same sunlight filters through. But now, instead of sadness, I feel something softer. Gratitude. Every now and then, I open the old music box. The melody has faded slightly, the gear's a bit slow, but the tune still plays. It's imperfect but beautiful, like life itself. Sometimes neighbors stop by to chat. They think I'm strong. They tell me, "You've handled so much with grace." But the truth is, I didn't find strength by avoiding pain. I found it by letting myself feel it, by sitting in the silence until it stopped hurting to breathe. I've learned that grief isn't a sign of weakness. It's proof of love. Deep, lasting love. One evening, I sat on the porch watching the sun go down. The sky turned shades of pink and gold, and a soft breeze moved through the trees. I closed my eyes and felt peace, the kind that doesn't ask for anything, doesn't demand to be explained. In that moment, I realized something Emma had been trying to tell me all along. Love doesn't end when life does. It continues in the quiet, in the small gestures, in the way we live afterward. I whispered softly, "I miss you, sweetheart. But I'm okay now." And I swear, just as the last bit of sunlight slipped behind the hills, I heard her voice in my heart, clear and warm. "I know, Mom." That night, before going to bed, I looked at the framed letter on my nightstand one last time. The ink had faded a little, but the words were still there, strong, gentle, alive. I smiled and turned off the light. The house wasn't empty anymore. It was full of memories, of laughter, of love that never truly left. And as I drifted to sleep, I realized we never really say goodbye to the ones we love. We just learn to listen differently,